the insert tonight. We really do appreciate.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Yes, you've been flying way off the radar recently, right? So everyone has been sort of on the campaign trail. I don't know what has been up your collective sleeves.
Well, first of all, as I said, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks for having me. I've been on a listening mission.
Listening mission?
Yes, the last several days, and I'll continue to be on a listening mission for several months before we begin very active campaign across the country. Because sometimes I think the way we transact in politics in this country, we think sometimes we know everything. Because, you know, we are leaders, or we are seeking to be leaders and looking for positions and so on. And we do very little to listen to the real people, you know, in their real circumstances and the contexts and so on. So I've been spending a lot of time talking to, you know, fellow Kenyans, my fellow teachers across the country, school principals, public servants. I mean, literally people from all walks of life, and you know, and I'll continue to do that. Some of it is public, some of it is, of course, necessarily private, as you engage with people, and most importantly, some of it is strategic. When you get people in their usual and comfort environment, they're able to speak to you candidly about, you know, their day-to-day life, how they feel about the country. Public servants, some of them for good reasons, you know, want to have very candid conversations with you, and I'm keen to have real detailed and, you know, candid conversations with people, and that's what I would like to do for the foreseeable future as I complete the development of my campaign platform, consult with other players in the political environment, and build a coalition with other political players. Because in Kenya, as you know, Dibal, since the advent of multi-party politics, there hasn't been a government that has been formed by a single party. President Kibaki came to power, you know, through NAC, a coalition of several political parties and groups of people. And they worked on this until almost, you know, 2 months before the general elections, because they completed the process on 14th of October and the elections were in December. It was 2 months to it. You know, when you come to 2013, again, President Kenyatta and TNA and, you know, William Ruto, URP coming together, you know, to
the Jubilee Coalition.
And then the Jubilee Coalition. It takes time. It's a very painstaking exercise, but which is necessary. And again, you know, the downside of it is that it's very time-consuming, requires a lot of patience, you have to listen to a lot of people. But the upside of it is that you also deepen confidences. You get to know people. But
it also undermines the spirit of multi-party democracy.
No, it doesn't. Actually,
if we have coalitions, it's a big threat. You know, we have just coalitions without any robust party manifestos, everyone collapsing their party to be forming one party. Then at the end of the day, we find also the parties are tapering off. You are being asked to dissolve your party.
No, it doesn't. Actually, far from it. You know, look around the world. The strong governments have been formed. I mean, look at even Israel itself. You are forced to negotiate and discuss with others to be able to form government. It forces a measure of humility, you know, on political players, and also forces political players to recognize, acknowledge, and appreciate other players in the terrain. Otherwise, you know, sometimes huge political parties and so on do not necessarily foster democracy, and then we are in that particular space where we've got to keep negotiating and talking to each other and so on, and then that forces us to build relations across the country, and then it forces us to increase participation, include others in the process. Otherwise, as I said, the downside of it is that it's sometimes painstaking, it takes a lot of time, and it's very taxing in terms of time. But the truth be told, the upside of it is also that you get to know each other, you get to know the country, you get to understand people and various groups and interests, so that when you end up as a leader with all these people you have worked with, you're likely to be more responsive to people's challenges and more responsive to the circumstances that you're working with, because you have walked the journey together over a long period of time, and through that you have learned things you probably would not have learned if you just depended on a huge political machine.
Thank you. Quite cogently put. I will inclined to wonder, many Kenyans feel that past presidencies have been over-promising and under-delivering. What is discernibly different about Dr. Fred Matiang'i's candidacy? And why should Kenyans believe and also put their hope in you for a better Kenya?
I believe Kenyans are looking for a government they can trust, a government that will work for them or serve them, and not leaders who will serve themselves. I don't think Kenyans are looking for, some benevolent dictator, heavenly given gift, self-praising, all-knowing, most everything, to lead the country or to manage the country. Kenyans are looking for people who understand the challenges of the country and are ready to work with them to solve those problems, and not to lie to them as a way of getting along in life. The difference is that, unlike some people who are seeking leadership in this country, I have been in public service. I served as a cabinet minister for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I confronted some of the difficult challenges at the time. I worked with the people of Kenya and Kenya's incredible public servants to solve problems. That attitude of trustworthy approach, practical, result-oriented approach to public affairs is what I think I will bring to the equation, is what I think is different. I know what the challenge is, and I am ready to face that challenge and solve the problems in a practical and serious manner. I will level with the people of Kenya. I will not tell people things that do not exist. This country is smarting from some incredible level of hypocrisy on the part of national leaders. I ask people, I've been having meetings, and talking to people, even the religious leaders or the clergy, who are the ones who feel most betrayed and most abused. Because they were told good stories by some of our national leaders during the electoral period in 2022, all of which turned out to be smoke. Leaders who drove around and were carried out in wheelbarrows, and that time they own helicopters, pretending to be part of the downtrodden people, when in actual fact they were not. The country is smarting from that kind of experience, and you can see how that is being transacted in public office. That is the difference I bring. That I'll be very honest with the people of Kenya. I'll face our challenges honestly and very candidly, and I will go to work for the country. Because you see, sometimes you wonder whether our leaders are actually working for the country or working for their pockets. That is why, Dibal, today I brought you this as one of the things. It's very rare that people come to the studio with gifts. This is not a gift anyway, but it's a report that I think you probably may have seen. If you have not seen it, it's the Auditor General's report, a special audit on the e-citizen. When you look at this report, it's a classic example of why we need a new government in this country. Because everything that the Auditor General says here is basically, she describes crime, blatant crime being committed by people who have been given a responsibility, and you ask yourself the question, how then is that?
We'll come to that.
So the question is, I'm seeking leadership because I know that as a country we are better than this. We can do much better than this as a people. Right. And why should Kenya be denied an opportunity to have better leaders who can do a better job than this, than looting the country?
You mentioned the clergy, and 3 years ago, of course, I think you are alluding to that particular meeting you had with the clergy. You mentioned that after the COVID-19 pandemic, the new pandemic we'll be facing is the pandemic of lies. And you went full steam ahead to throw caution, warning them not to become victims of lies. So the question to you is, from your own accurate appraisement of the country right now, are Kenyans victims of lies?
Absolutely, and probably worse than that. Let me ask a very simple question. Tibal, you live in this country. If I would put a rhetorical question, what were Kenyans told in 2022 that has been done? what were Kenyans told in 2022 that has happened. In fact, the other day I saw people looking at the scorecard and saying, oh, now the administration has done 3 years and so on. And then someone was asking me, how would you score them if you had to score them? I would give them a D-. Because you see, the question is, if people tell you one thing and they don't even do it, or they do the other, or lie to you blatantly, I think people must have lost count or even lost the ability to document the level of lies that the public has been told. And I ask again, what is it that Kenyans were told through that campaign period by the administration that they have done? I mean, the answer is, that's why I argue all the time that in governments that are in power or governments that are in place, always campaign on their track record. They campaign on what they have done. So either incumbents gives you an opportunity to work and very easily attract re-election or additional time, or if you don't do the work, you're punished for it. So the truth is, I think Kenyans are victims of the lies they were told. And I have been vindicated that what is happening, I said clearly to the clergy that after the COVID pandemic, the next thing was an outbreak of lies in Kenya. So national politicians, saying virtually everything. I'll put so many billions this way, I'll put so many billions that way and so on. Where are they? I said that time those are just lies. I went further at the meeting of the National Council for Administration of Justice and pointed out the fact that because we have a very weak campaign financing infrastructure in the country, we are allowing further bribery and extreme or an amount of incredible corruption to penetrate the electoral system. Politicians are buying seats, and I warned then that if you are not very careful, we will launder into public office or elective office individuals of questionable characters and so on. Money launderers, wash characters, and all that kind of thing. What has happened since that time? We have been grey-listed by the Americans.
Yeah, we'll come to it. We'll come to the grey listing.
The EU issued a report the other day saying we are a financially insecure environment for financial transactions. So I think I have been vindicated.
Right, I'm trying to see some of, especially on the education reforms, because now you say there's nothing that has really happened. But just looking at the scorecard that was put out, maybe I can read out some of the things that we've done. We have a school feeding program, 2.6 million learners supported, up from 2.26 million in 2022. Help retain learners in school and improve transition rates. You can say in the previous administration there was a 100% transition rate. Teachers recruitment as well. 76,000 teachers recruited, right? We have 24,000 jobs currently advertised by the Teacher Service Commission. Talk about infrastructure. 23,000 new classrooms constructed. We have Open University, I think, which is a new seminal, of course, salutary effort that is coming from the government as well. 5,063, and we have 30 new academic degree programs developed. And the list goes on and on. So would you say and characterize this as lies?
Actually, it's very laughable, to be honest with you. I mean, it's laughable. I would use a stronger, and I will explain to you, I would use a stronger language if we are not on live TV. Let me ask you, the Open University they're talking about is work that we started doing in 2020 with the Korea Institute of Science and Technology. And we later on formed the Kenya Institute of Science and Technology based in Konsa. That is work that we were doing. You know, when someone comes up and claims credit for the establishment of the Open University, it's a joke. That is work that we had started doing in the year 2020. I am the one who traveled to Korea as Minister of Education and worked with colleagues who are working at that particular time. So what is new? They're talking about, school feeding program. School feeding program has always been there. I thought that we were going to talk about tripling the numbers of those that we were feeding out of the program. The improved transition rate. Why can't they give us the figures of the improved transition rate? That is the language of survival, public relations language. The administration, to be very honest here, and I don't think programs such as this are intended to be public relations exercises and jokes about the country. These are very serious business about our country. The dropout rates, I think, in the education sector probably could have now gone back to the pre-Kibaki days, or are threatening to go back to the pre-Kibaki days. You need to know the number of university students who have deferred their exams because they cannot pay school fees and so on. Everywhere in this country, you go to the villages, I mean, people are trying to hold a rampage to take their kids to school, even to university and so on. The system that everybody, talks on both sides of their mouth, lie and do PR all the time. All that the leaders of our country engaged in is just public relations, not tangible, actual growth that you can see that has happened. And by the way, Dibal, let me tell you, if it was there, they would not even need to talk about it themselves. The recipients of the service, the consumers of services are the people of Kenya. They would talk about it. I've often pointed out that we would not even be campaigning or even talking about replacing government if the government itself was performing very well. Because incumbents are always either A, protected by the consumers of the services they give, or B, are punished for not providing those services. This is what I mean, if I may explain. Everywhere you go, if a lot of wonderful stuff was happening the way it's being painted there, wananchi are the ones who would be telling us, hey, tafadhali, give them a bit more time so that they can finish what they are doing. Or, these classrooms are doing so well, let's move ahead and so on and so forth. The classrooms infrastructure data that they are reciting there is a product of CQIP. CQIP was a World Bank project that we were working on when we were in the Ministry of Education together with the late Professor Magoha and so on. I expected that in the third year by now, government would have put additional resources. We'll be talking about more classrooms than they are talking about at the moment. Because remember, we're supposed to be having CDF funds that are going into that arrangement. The government is supposed to be putting more funds. The CQIP funds were going there. More work ought to have been done that they are trying to talk about at this point in time. So the question is, when you're having transfers of capitation to non-existent schools, to ghost schools, you're having payments to ghost clinics and so on and so forth. I mean, how can you claim credit and claim development in a case like that?
But do you think this is a capitation to ghost schools? It is just currently on this particular regime? When you were the Minister of Education, you want to tell me this was not also thriving under your watch?
Never happened. By the way,
or it was unbeknownst to you?
Never happened. The frustration about this is that, and I think Kenyans know this, we worked together with the World Bank in the education sector to introduce NEMIS, the National Education Information Management System. I don't know why that program was abandoned, because you see, we were all looking for accurate data in the education sector, because accurate data is what will enable you to do the correct transfers and the right transfers of resources to the schools and to whichever sectors that you are trying to put resources. For unknown reasons, I'm told that program was abandoned. It is the absence of that accurate and reliable system of data, or sometimes the deliberate effort that leads to transfers going to schools that do not exist anywhere in the country. So the challenge here is that, and this is why I always insist, politics aside, and argument about who is in, who is out aside, it's important to look at the reality of our situation and answer the question, the famous question in politics. Are you better off today than you were in January 2023? Across the board. Are you feeling better? Are you feeling secure? A while ago, before I came here, I was having a discussion with some people, and I was saying, in the capital city of our country, you know yourself how many times people have been shot dead here, right in the middle of the capital city of our country. And then this continues on and on and on again, proliferation of small arms. I don't know what we are doing with the way we are managing our borders, and so that the rates of crime are moving up. The statistics are there to speak for this. The issue is this, Dibal. We can argue about all this because of politics and so on. There must come a time in the life of our country, all of us together, regardless of the political position you hold, or regardless of the political persuasion you subscribe to, when we sit together as people who love their country and ask and answer this question. Is this the way we think we should run our country? In my view, if you ask me very sincerely and very honestly, the answer is no. So what then should we do? That's why when people tell me, these days I hear some people are saying, Matiang'i doesn't abuse the system enough or hit the system enough and so on. I keep saying, let's focus on the issues first before we go to the individuals and before we emotionalize the debate. Because you see, You could very easily emotionalize the debate, talk about the individuals or hurl insults at the individuals, in which case then the focus is lost.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, but still on hovering on academia. Recently also we saw teachers who went to State House, and there are claims that each was given 10,000 shillings. If you can dial back, the time machine, and you were the CS of education, will you have accompanied the teachers?
I wouldn't do anything like that. Some of these things are jokes that you feel, you feel very angry about. A country like Kenya, and this is the reason why, Dibal, I'm telling you, Kenya is better than this, and we all need to summon the energies and efforts we can master to help our country move in the right direction. But let me answer your question more directly. Dibal, you take 10,000 teachers to State House. These are leaders of the teaching profession in the country, whether they are Kupet or KNUT or whatever.
Yeah, but is that a confirmable fact that they were given 10,000 shillings each?
I don't know.
It's very speculative.
It's speculative.
Yes.
I don't work for State House. I don't know those characters who do those things, and they are very liable things I wouldn't do myself. Then you go ahead and give them. Let us assume that because we are all working on reportage, let us assume that reportage is correct. If you have 10,000 teachers at State House, you give them 10,000 shillings. That's 100 million shillings. The teachers meant cover insurance. That line item for TSC is 17 billion shillings. If you look at how that tender was executed and how the teachers' insurance cover was given, those who ended up with that business are people who are connected to the powers that be. Mm-hmm. The teachers are not getting any health services. Before I came here this morning, I was talking to a friend of mine who has just paid a bill of 100,000 for his sister, a teacher who was admitted the cover could not pay. Now, 17 billion, probably looted or probably stolen through all manner of connections, and then 100 million for teachers, leaders, each one of them getting 10,000 shillings. That 10,000 shillings cannot even pay their bill tomorrow if they are sick. Why do we even bribe? Why does a government bribe people? Why as a government do you bribe people?
Why should we be raising hesitation if we have the teachers who are going there? We've had also the business community going there to meet the president. Other communities have been going there. So why is everyone really taking special umbrage with the teachers going to State House?
No, by the way,
would you?
By the way, I wouldn't have a problem. The president should meet his citizens because those are the people who have employed him. But the question is this: is that the format in which management of issues is supposed to be done? Are we supposed to do that? Would you get 55 million people to State House every other day and give them 10,000 shillings each? Or else, if you wanted to be fair to the teachers, then surely then every teacher should find in their bank account 10,000 shillings at the end of this month, since the president is behaving like Father Christmas and is happy enough to give them 10,000 shillings each. Why give only those ones who are the leaders? Let then, if it's a gift from a magnanimous, benevolent, God-sent president, let then each one of them get 10,000 shillings in their account. The question I'm asking is that really the right way we should manage public affairs? If you ask me, in my honest opinion, I don't know, but in my honest opinion, I don't think it's the right way. So you ask me the question, is that something I would do? The answer is no, I wouldn't do it. Because it doesn't make any sense at all. Because you have people in a jamboree out there. Basically, it's a, if you allow me to say, it's a very old-style way of power display, mm-hmm. and some sort of irrelevant public relations. You almost feel like we are getting to an era in our country, we have government by bribery and public relations. So that and by the way, if you want to be analytical, you answer the question, why is that being done? Why must you do it? Why must you always boss people around, give them money and so on? Governments do things and maybe things in an unsustainable manner, by the way. Because you see, as I said, will you get 55 billion people to State House and give them 10,000 shillings? Anyway, the question you ask directly is, would I do it? And I've told you I wouldn't.
You wouldn't, but you've always had scruples as well with the visitation of the deputy president in your domain, in your turf, way back in Kisii. Yeah, you on record said they've been there like 9 times and dishing out 100 shillings, 64 shillings, empowering. What is this empowerment that they're talking? Why would you have scruples with that as well?
By the way, I have no scruples about that lovable and bizarre way or managing public affairs. The question I keep asking all the time as a responsible citizen of this country is, and by the way, that is the basis on which I say Kenya is surely better than this. We can do better things than this. We are capable of being better people, managing our country better than this. How can you wake up, every week you are the deputy president of the country, you are flying to a particular corner of the country. Like now I was telling people from my neck of the goods, that they have become suddenly objects of love from government. They are loved so much. The government people are there every other day. They fly in helicopters, they arrive there. One day they were in 9 choppers. They land there. And they love them so much, they arrive and give them 64 bob each. Then they give them 100 shillings each. That is how they love them so much. They want them to support them. Honestly, I don't know anything more silly than that. And then secondly, the way you run public affairs and the way you want to run public affairs is government to get some work done. And it is obviously for a particular reason why that is being done. And that is not improving the lives of those people in any material way. To arrive there and do those kinds of things is actually to abuse the intelligence of those people. And no wonder all the time they're using animal imagery. It's because they look at these people as animals. It's the way you get your cows and you give them napier grass so that you can milk them. And and so on. So these people, you arrive, you give them 64 bob or 100 bob and hope that they will impoverish. It's a very, if you were to analyze, it's a very Stalinist way, impoverish people into subservience. Don't do anything, don't give them services, they are so poor, so that when you arrive with 100 shillings, they are supposed to kneel down and worship you. 62 years after independence, is that how we are supposed to be managing our public affairs? Honestly, I was saying, if you calculate in the last 2 months or so, if you look at the deployment of ferrying trips to State House from my part of the country, if you have deployed 350 million shillings, let us assume Dibal, we are not foolish people. If you have deployed 350 million shillings in that kind of endeavor, take 10 million shillings to a school, each school. You will do 35 secondary schools in those 2 counties of Nyamira and Kisii. And each one of them will have a very good laboratory, and they would have facilities, and you will alleviate some of the challenges that the parents have in that particular place. Leadership is about problem solving. And what problem do you solve with 64 shillings? It's a joke.
So honestly, you're putting it to us that this is a Starlink sort of, system of governance where you're defrocking, I know there's this analogy they normally, quote, I don't know how accurate it is, of a chicken being, denuded, defrocked. And he says, he was telling his military men that you can see the way I'm trying to, defrock this chicken. And afterwards, when now it is so denuded, and without any feathers, you still drop, the maize grains for the chicken to come, and it will come to your feet to come and eat it again. Is this what politicians are doing? Honestly,
my brother, what's the difference? Let me ask.
So is it really backed in our system?
What's the difference? It's a style. It is a political ecosystem that has been set by the leaders of the day. The ecosystem is driven by, don't reason with people. Don't engage with them, and don't work for them. You don't have to work for them. Why work for them? Loot their money and loot their wealth. And small change you say from the looting, you can show it off by giving the money. And when you give them that 100 shillings or 200 bob, you are such a hero. You are supposed to be worshipped because you are called a great man, because you are the one who brought 100 bob or who brought 64 shillings. And not when you do tangible things. Do you imagine, and I want you for a moment to pause, fortunately for us, those of us who are in this day and age, we have lived through administrations where work has been done. Do you actually imagine, do you foresee, if you close your eyes in your mind's eye, President Mwai Kibaki be doing those kinds of things? Do you imagine President Uhuru Kenyatta, for example, spending time, be smiling and feeling nice that people are being given 200 bob, 100 bob? What are we actually doing with our people? And yet, we would put these resources in tangible development work, and then also have conversations with our people. There's nothing wrong with doing political work and even trying to convince people to get out of what they believe to do something else. But is this the way? And how long will you do that? And to what effect in the long run? And then in the process, Dibal, 2/3 of the things that are being said there are just lies. there's no truth in it. If I come to your district and tell you I'm going to do a road from here to that point, these days the budget is in Parliament, the figures are there, and people can go and check what is being done there. So for me, it is also a question of, it's three things. Number one, it is how we are degenerating as a society, all of us, especially our leaders, and in the attitude with the people they lead, how we are degenerating. And I'm concerned about this in a very objective manner. That's why I keep saying, sometimes, let's put aside the issue of individuals and calling people names and so on, and look at the issues in the rightful sense, and ask this question, surely, is this the right way to do things? Is this going to get us somewhere? What is the end game?
Thank you. Right, so you mentioned earlier that you served for a decade in different cabinet dockets under the Uhuru administration, even chairing the Cabinet Committee on Development, a role many considered akin to, de facto Prime Minister. And you mentioning that. I've heard you mentioning that you are logically exhausted. And so I'm inclined to wonder, why then this renewed flash of interest in the highest office in the land? You wanted to take a break because you've been working, continuously apace for 10 good years without a break. And now, you claim you're logically exhausted. So is your energy renewed? Why the flash of interest for the presidency? Don't you think also that will be very taxing?
Actually, I think it's good to...
And what do you mean, by the way, before even... by mentioning and saying that you're logically exhausted?
I think the context in which that may have gotten is probably is not the same as you are explaining it. And I think this is what I meant. I said that after serving in cabinet for 10 years, what was on my mind when we were leaving in 2022 actually was to take a break for like a year, some sort of sabbatical. We're not in government, I had not had time to take leave. You work, especially in the security docket, you work almost 24/7. And there's nothing I needed more than leave, actual leave, to take like time to reflect, time with myself, time with friends I had not met. In another interview, I told somebody that I actually counted in my private study, that time when I started organizing my things, I had about 52 books that people had sent me over the years. Some of them were almost 80 years old since I would send the books. The gifts, some of them had not opened, books, friends of mine, colleagues, professors who are teaching elsewhere had sent me and autographed and so on, and I had not even opened them or even read them because I'd been busy. Of course, some of them, as I said, were about 80 years old and so on. They were no longer interesting to read, but some of them were like a year, 2 years old, and I would start reading them and so on. And I thought I would take a year to now, look at all these, look at these books, put them together, and then now reflect on, after that 1 year sabbatical, what is the next thing I would like to do with my life? And I needed a complete break, a transition from, that point, that life, this is way of describing it, that pressure cooker life of, working very hard and so on. I needed leave. Sit down and think through what do I need to do next, so that by the time I emerge out of that leave, I'm able to now say, okay, I've reflected on this sufficiently, this is what I need to do and stuff like that. But then, of course, as the year was coming to an end, the opportunity at the World Bank, also came knocking. And it was a very interesting, job. I couldn't turn down the offer. I thought it was very nice. I interviewed twice, and I was offered the contract. I thought it was very nice, and I enjoyed every bit of what I did at that time. And in the course of that, working and...
what exactly were you undertaking at the World Bank?
Well, you see...
We've never known.
According to the rules of the bank, there are certain things I can't discuss. But I signed in at the bank at the headquarters, first of all, as a regional advisor to the Vice Presidency, and then later on, I became Senior Governance Advisor to a region. So... through that work and engaging with colleagues at the bank and interacting with other people, of course, you learn a lot. I learned a lot in that process. Then, of course, the call that came, you know, people asking me, I would even meet Kenyans, you know, in the US, and other people, and they ask me, you know, why don't you want to participate in public life in Kenya? Why don't you want to participate in public life in your country? Every time I came here for leave, I would meet people, some of those who are senior and well-placed in society would ask me, are you happy that you know you can do something to your country, but you don't want to do it because either you are happy and comfortable with your life, or you basically are looking down upon the possibility of going into public life and politics. So I decided anyway, let me make a contribution to my country.
So was it an afterthought? If Azimio had won, would you have taken this sabbatical break?
I don't know. It depends on whether they have given me an opportunity to serve. You know, I can't talk about what was there.
But you were in the smack dab, in the middle of the things operational about Azimio.
No. I was not. It's not true, actually. I was that I was smack dab.
Or you're the face of it.
No, not Azimio.
Or that was a perception.
No, that not Azimio. I was working in government at that time as a cabinet minister. Azimio was a political arrangement and so on. I know that, honestly speaking, I wouldn't lie here, that even those of us who were in government...
So you were not dabbling in politics? When you say, which deep state? No, I don't understand this deep state. Oh, this is a communist, you know, socialist propaganda. Isn't that politics?
Well, I was answering an accusation that was made all the time, that, you know, there's a deep state that is against some people. Now, by the way, it's good that you have raised that issue, Tibal. I said at that particular time that was a phantom. It's one of those big lies that were being said and so on. Now, those who are accusing us about deep state are the ones in government and in charge. How is it that 6 months later, they have never published what that deep state was about and told everybody what it was all about? At the right time, there are questions I'm going to ask.
There were promissory notes that, yes, we will have, you know, a state capture
commission of inquiry.
Yes, commission of inquiry.
And I've been waiting because I was one of those who was supposed to go before that commission of inquiry with President Kenyatta and the late General Ogola and so on. I have been waiting for it so that we go before it and put our piece and tell the country what we know about everything and about others. I've not seen it. And in any case, there are so many accusations that were made during that time, including a famous allegation, if you remember, that senior government officers were meeting at some hotel on Thika Road, plotting the assassination of a senior government official. People were even harassed. Some of my colleagues in cabinet went to DCI to record statements because purportedly they were preparing or planning an assassination. How is it that, because now the instruments of power are on the other side, and the leaders who are accusing us that day are the ones who are in the security sector, now they are the leaders, how come they have never published a report about that assassination attempt? Because they don't need anybody's permission to publish it. And all those things you are saying vindicate what I said. You know, I told Kenyans...
But going by the contract killings that we are seeing, of course, this is not the first time. We have a lawyer, Bobu, who has been killed. We have the MP, of course, who had been killed. How then are we sure if these allegations were not true, even then?
Why can't they put the information in the public domain? Because you see, whose permission do you need? I keep asking myself every time, unangoja filimbi ya nani? Whose wheels are you waiting for? Put the information that you have in the public domain and say, you can even actually publish a DCI report and say, it said X, Y, Z, this was the deep state, it was operating like this, and so on and so forth. You see, at that particular time, all manner of accusations were flying around. We were even being accused of how we were plotting to rig the election and steal the election and so on. Now, I am not even anywhere near power. So why can't that report be published so that people can see, yes, by the way, this is the information we stumbled upon. Matiang'i was meeting with Kibicho and so on, and so this is what they were plotting and stuff like that. All these were just lies, the things told because of elections and drama. The import of that now, because that is now stuff that is gone, the lesson from that is for Kenyans to learn and be very careful about things that people tell them. And also, the Bible is the most quoted book in this country by people. The same Bible, I think, says somewhere that by their works you shall know them. You now know the works of those who are saying those things, so you know who they are. They said those things and so on. Now, another season is arriving when they will say other things. So it's upon the people of Kenya to decide whether they are believable people.
Thank you. Let me also hark you back to your docket in the Ministry of Interior.
Yeah.
Huduma number. It was Huduma number. It was a spectacular failure.
What is the scientific basis of that conclusion?
I took my sleep. I've never had my Huduma number until today.
By the time we
my data, I don't know where it is today. When you're talking about data protection, you are the man, you are the figure, and you're very coercive. And you're saying that if we don't pick up this number, if anyone in this country does not have an Huduma number, he will not be accessing services from government. Wasn't that manipulation and coercive?
No, it wasn't at all.
So you're talking about voluntary, this is mandatory, so why were we swinging on pendulums?
No, by the way, let me explain to you. And I think it's very important to have facts about something before you make conclusions. The intention behind the Huduma number registration, the tragedy is that this administration did not complete that, and they started innovations around it, and I'll explain to it if you give me time, was to create what we call a single source of truth, a UPI, a unique personal identifier for everyone, so that you aggregate all the data sets we have from the births and deaths, registration of IDs, the driving licenses, passports, anti-migration, and so on. If you lived in countries which have achieved this, like now India, Finland, of course the US is the one that started this long time ago. In the US, you are given something called a social security number.
Yes.
With a social security number in any office you go, once you give your social security number, your details are very easily accessed and you can get services easily. Someone doesn't have to send you home to bring your ID, your driver's license, your birth certificate, and so on, because all that data and information is available in a single file that you will get when you give your social security number. We wanted Kenyans to get one number. That number is what they would use in everything that they would do. But the government invested very heavily in the resources of integrating the data sets. And actually we did, because there are people who have an Huduma card. I have one. And we did 13 million of those cards. In other words, the process was meticulous in integrating the data sets. Once we get all your data, as DIBAL, we give you an Huduma card and a number. We even acquired our own capability through our security agencies to produce those cards and to produce those numbers here in Nairobi. Now, the challenge, in my view, is that when our new national leaders came in, they had different ideas, or because of procurement interest or because of deals they wanted, they abandoned that process and they started talking about Maisha number or whatever it is they call it. That is just basically an excuse to generate an opportunity for a tender to do that. If they had stayed on that trajectory, the resources are available. And by the way, DIBAL, the resources are not Fred Matiang'i's resources or Uhuru Kenyatta's resources. They are resources that belong to the people of Kenya. The infrastructure that was created is available. No one went away with it. And I'm told that even when they came into office, they were briefed about that, they inspected those resources, and the infrastructure is available. Why they have not completed that process, I frankly do not know. Yet, I don't know anything that would stop them from completing that process and completing the issuance of the Huduma card. And I'm willing to say this, and I can repeat it anywhere in public, that there was nothing more needed, and there was no need for a new tender to do anything. All they needed to do is to continue the process of integrating the data sets that we were doing, because we had already done over 13 million of those, and by this time they will have completed integrating all of them. Every Kenyan will be having an Huduma number.
So, still under your watch, we had legal issues, of course, in the compliance, looking at the policy and the oversight deficits. Huduma Kenya's secretariats has been operating for over a decade without a solid enabling law or policy. You mentioned the Auditor General with the eCitizen. She's here now reporting for the financial year 2023-2024, flagged that the secretariat established in 2014 is not backed by legal or policy framework. And because of this, its operations legality is in question. It also noted that the oversight bodies, e.g. the Service Delivery Summit required by the Gazette Notice, are not clearly functioning as intended. This was under your watch. And I've heard you also mentioning that everything that you do, especially when it comes to legal framework, you work in concurrence with the given bodies that are there, including the Auditor General and the Attorney General, especially the Attorney General when it comes to legal matters. So how did this slip through your fingers?
By the way, there was no statutory requirement needed to functionalize the Huduma Center. I need to explain this. Huduma Center is a very simple concept. It is pulling together public service centers to work from one place. And all these public service centers are governed by individual statute. There is a land law in the country, there is a national registration law in the country, there is a security law, if, for example, the issuance of a certificate of good conduct, there is a birth and death certificate legislation through the legislation process in the country. All these exist on their own. Huduma Center essentially is pulling all these people. Instead of them working from the individual offices, you put them all together to work under one roof, so that when a Kenyan wants a service, they may go to replace their lost ID and at the same time get a certificate of good conduct. Instead of going to Nyayo House to replace the ID, then they have to walk all the way to Kiambu Road to get the certificate of good conduct. They can get both of them at the same place. You do not need a law to do that.
So you don't need any policy framework?
The Gazette notice was it's by executive order, and you know the law allows that. The president issued an executive order because it's essentially an administrative function completely. Let me give you an example of what we did. The international staffers in the country through the UN, because you know we have the largest UN office in Nairobi, you know, in the south. The largest UN operation in the south is in Nairobi, and because of that, you know, international staffers who come to Nairobi sometimes have got to go to Nyayo House to check their permit. Those who have to get Kenyan driving licenses have got to go to NTSA and so on. The previous Director General of the UN, Bangula, petitioned the President and said, you know, look at the distance traveling from Gigiri, you go to Nyayo House, Gigiri to Upper Hill to look for your to NTSA. Are you able to get all these services in one office in Gigiri so that our international staffers don't have to suffer? We asked her a simple question: do you have a room? She said, yes, we have a room. Then we went down the list of the services that are needed. You need driving licenses. You need passport or immigration services. You need registration if you bring, you know, workers who are not, staffers who are not part of the UN who need a work permit and so on. You need to go to Nyayo House. When we listed all these services, we now went to the agencies and asked each of these agencies to second an officer from their agency to go into that one room at the UN. And then we said UN staff don't have to travel to go to Upper Hill to look for driving licenses. They don't have to travel to go to Nyayo House to renew any document. So they go to that one room at the UN complex. Huduma centers also operate like that. They're not a department or a new entity. These services are all being pulled in one place, in one center, so that the citizens can find them there. Instead of you walking to Upper Hill to look for your driving license, then you go to replace your ID in Nyayo, then you go to Kiambu Road to get a certificate of good conduct. The officers from there come to one particular place. So what was needed was an executive order by the president, because an administrative function which was done, and then now all these services can second to the center. The Auditor General is complaining about the supervisory board that is referred to in the Gazette notice. That is the responsibility of the administration. We had one during our time that was supervising the services. And you know, these services are spread across ministries. It's not only one minister. So sometimes it would be me, because as Minister for Interior, I'm the one who's dealing with registration and so on. There would be issues on lands. My colleague, the Cabinet Secretary for Lands, would be interested in certain challenges involving the land sector, and so on and so forth. Sometimes multiple ministers. At one point, they were put under the Ministry of Devolution, then later on under the Ministry of Public Service. But we would all meet. It would be a question of putting together a supervisory board that would look into that. And that would not be anything new. It would be heads of these departments who would sit from time to time and figure out, maybe do a very simple thing that we used to do, to just a spot check, you know, look at a turnaround survey. How long does it take for Wananchi to get services in this place? Very many times I walked into Huduma centers myself, you know, during the day to find out, you know, what are the services being offered, what is delaying, and so on and so forth. And we took reports annually. When we got reports, we said, okay, this service is delaying, this service has problems, and would troubleshoot with the respective department. So the issues that the Auditor General are raising are administrative issues that ought to be addressed by the administration.
Mm-hmm. Right, thank you. I want just also just to follow up. Under your watch in the Ministry of Interior, we had Shakahola happening. I don't know what has been your reaction, because that has been your docket as well. People are saying this did not just blow up in this current regime. It must have been actually happening way before this regime came to power. It is so systemic, it is shocking, bodies are still being exhumed, and there's a huge the geographical expanse of the Shakahola. Now we have Binzaro again. Kenyans are wondering, did the Ministry of Interior had no sodding idea what was happening on the ground? And from your own assessment again, if it blew up at the current particular regime and the police, it was unbeknownst to the police that this thing was happening. People are reporting there are people and children who are disappearing, yet there was no immediate intervention that was coming from the security officers. This blow up, did it just happen, or it was a burning embers that was a tinderbox waiting to explode?
I will, Dibal, I'm paranoid about facts.
Paranoid?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because when we deal with issues, we must be very factual. There is a report of the county security team that was issued at the beginning of 2023. I was not the Cabinet Secretary for Interior in 2023, which was a warning shot that there was some fishy activity that were happening in that particular place. I wasn't the Minister for Interior in 2023 when that report was written. When this matter broke out, the county security team in that particular region raised issues that they had actually warned, and they had filed a report on that particular incident early before Shakahola occurred. I was not the Cabinet Secretary for Interior in 2023, at the beginning of 2023. The simple question is this. I honestly want to say this, and I'll look Kenyans in the face and say this. It will not happen under my watch. If I had received that report myself as the minister, if I had been the minister myself at that particular time, I would have acted on that particular report. I used to hold quarterly meetings with the regional commissioners, and then monthly meetings with the regional commissioners, then quarterly meetings with the county commissioners and regional commissioners together. When county security teams raise issues about things that are happening in their respective jurisdiction, the first thing you do is go and look at what is going on. There is even an intelligence report that was done by NIS on the matter. Somebody somewhere did not do their homework, but it's not me. I was not the Minister for Interior at that particular time. And I would like to challenge anybody who says that it happened under my watch to produce the facts about it. The truth of the matter is this.
Were you presiding over, you as the Chief Cabinet Secretary, Aisha Jumwa? Because she had raised this alarm before.
Raised it to who?
Is in public record. Speaking about, Pastor Mackenzie and some very ulterior things that were happening with that particular cult.
It's very nice to hear these political statements from people after the fact. The truth of the matter is this. The behavior of, if this matter was investigated, and this is why, by the way, I have been thinking that it is unfair that Parliament has not moved on some of these issues. Because when you look at the architecture of our Constitution, I think Parliament is a very powerful institution. When we were in Cabinet, we really dreaded Parliament, because the Parliament is the one institution that can sack you, and even the President will not have recourse to your dismissal. If Parliament had moved into this matter and conducted a public inquiry on this issue, these facts would have come out much more clearly. But because these matters are swept under the table, sometimes we may never get to know the truth. I would like to know
But if they were raised by one of your cabinet secretaries, I wonder what is the modus operandi. Or did you expect maybe an official, statement from her? She can make it from public rallies. I mean, that should also pique your interest.
Who was one of my cabinet secretaries who raised the issue? I couldn't have a cabinet secretary. The cabinet secretary was serving the president.
Of course.
Who raised the matter?
You were presiding over them as a chief cabinet secretary. Aisha Juma mentioned this.
Aisha Juma was a cabinet secretary when I was a minister myself. Refresh your memory a bit and your history.
Okay.
I don't think Aisha Juma was a cabinet minister when I was
during your tenure.
She wasn't a cabinet minister during my tenure. I mean, she may have been an MP or women rep or something.
Yes.
And let me tell you the truth. I remember vividly the issues the Honorable Aisha Juma has raised before on matters that I dealt with. I was in Kilifi, I dealt with Disco Matanga issues. I remember to this day that we had challenges about early pregnancies and the havoc that they had caused in Kilifi. It had the lowest enrollment rate for girls. And when we went down there with the county security team and everybody who advised about Disco Matanga and so on, I banned the Disco Matanga. I spent about 2 days with Magu Mutindeka, who was the county commissioner then, and Joseph Boynet, who was the Inspector General of Police, was with me there, and Osia, who is now the Principal Administrative Secretary. We were together. We sorted that matter out. Dibal, Aisha Juma was not a cabinet minister during our time, and nobody raised that matter when we were in government. And if he had been raised, we would act on it. There exists a report by the National Intelligence Service, and on this particular one, let us be very honest and credit them. The NIS did a good job on that matter. They raised the matter up, and there was a red flag that was also given by the county security team on that matter to the leadership at that point in time. We were not the ones in office at that time. I think at that moment, maybe action should have been taken. Maybe it was late. What would give us the truth on that matter instead of going back and forth is if there had been, as I said, an all-parties parliamentary inquiry on the issue, so that it gives everybody an opportunity, including Mheshimiwa herself, to come and maybe, if she so wishes or is asked by the parliament, everybody traces the origin of this particular issue. But I can tell you for a fact, and I am willing to submit myself to public scrutiny on the matter, let people look at the facts and the issues the way they are, and ask the question, when was that report brought to the attention of the leaders? It was about over 6 months since I had left, the docket as the Minister for Interior.
Right. Thank you for the time-lapse correction there. So, of course, the question about when you're talking about abductions, and you've also been raising a very stern criticism regarding the current administration of the abductions which is going on. And I have heard you from previous interviews as well on the question of River Yala. What would you tell Kenyans about, because this was happening also under your watch, this Ministry of Interior, that you had no sodding idea about these incidences of the retrieved bodies from River Yala?
Immediately it came to our notice. We did what the law required us to do, namely launch immediately an investigation into the matter. By the way, the other day I was joking in my mind about this issue, and I asked it for records because I had got some research assistant to dig up the records, not just on the issue of the River Yala, but how many times I went to Parliament as Minister for Interior to answer questions on forced disappearances, people who had who could not be accounted for, and so on. And I discovered that in my tenure, I had been invited to Parliament 3 times on issues related to the forced disappearances and individuals who could not be accounted for. And out of this, actually, it's only one incident I can recollect when a member of Parliament, I think from the northeastern part of the country, was very accurate on the information that they had on these forced disappearances and so on. You see, the issue is this. Throughout life, everywhere you go, even since we started this interview, some crime has been committed somewhere. The question is not whether or not the crime has been committed. The question is, what did you do when that crime was committed? And then secondly, if really you were in the line to take action at that point in time, what action did you take? And because some of these actions are not protected by the statute of limitation, it can follow you even 20 or 30 or 40 years even after you have left the office. That is why I am the first one to tell people, We acted. This matter, I wouldn't not say that we did not know. We got to know about it. All of us in the National Security Council discussed this matter. If you go to the records of the National Security Council, you'll find minutes during which we discussed this matter. The Inspector General of Police, the DCI came on board, the Director of Intelligence then, and everybody. And we concluded at that particular time as a National Security Council that between a public inquiry and an investigation that would file a report, let's open a file and commence investigations on the matter. And as I've said before, we never left, government is acting in perpetuity. It exists beyond the individuals who are in office at that point in time. If an issue has happened, for example, here, and people feel it has not been properly investigated, nothing stops the government from investigating it afresh if they feel there's new evidence coming into it and so on and so forth. On this particular one, I have called for a public inquiry on the matter so that if people have information that's contrary to what I am giving, they make it out in public. Or if people know that there was either laxity or dereliction of duty on the part of those who are supposed to act, they demonstrate it in a public inquiry or they demonstrate it in a public institution. We acted as the law required us to act. It's like people ask me, Dibal, how did you people allow, sometimes I go to meetings and people tell me, where were you when the elections were happening? We don't believe these elections were free and fair. The election could have been rigged. How did you as a government allow, like someone was telling me the other day, you as an explanation, how did this happen? And I tell them, go and read the law and have someone help you understand it. When the electoral period begins, there are powers you will not exercise as Minister for Interior. Elections are a matter of the chairman of the Electoral Commission and the Commission. They begin acting. Under the law, I can't order the chairman of the Electoral of IEBC. If, for example, I also wonder, like in the case of 2022, I also ask the question, why did the IBC suspend the gubernatorial election in Kakamega and Mombasa? To this day, I don't understand. I was not the chairman of IBC. I was not even a commissioner. I didn't have powers to ask the question, or I didn't have powers to force the late Chebukati and his people to do something. There's nothing I could do. The law has got the same shortcomings. It places you within a framework where you have to act within the powers that you have at that point in time. The question is, did you act? Yes. If people feel it was insufficient action, that's why I'm saying let's have a public inquiry.
So you feel it was insufficient from your assessment?
No, the question is, I believe
you don't take responsibility?
I believe we did what we were expected to do. And I believe, let me say this on record, we acted very responsibly, like any responsible government would act. Now, if someone has got contrarily...
what is responsibly? Because if the rivers...
person in that particular docket, you occasion an investigation of that crime, and the investigation points you to a particular destination. If the investigation say it is Dibal who killed those people, the law takes over from there, and Dibal is arrested and prosecuted. If, as a minister, I have gone to the National Security Council, and the matter has been raised there by security chiefs, all of whom sit at the National Security Council, we have discussed the matter. Beyond that decision that let this matter be investigated and let the file be open, until the matter has been logically investigated and culprits have been found.
But we have an issue.
I want to be...
let me just butt in. We have an issue also who is investigating. Because we have the National Coroner's Act right now that has never been operationalized. If we had an independent body, we have a forensic laboratory to try and investigate these bodies that were coming from River Yala, as Kenyans, will feel we are satisfied because we have a Director General who is independent. But if you're telling us about investigations that is being carried out from your own security agencies, how do we know there is no cover-up of what was happening on River Yala? And again, will tell us why the National Coroner's Act has not been operationalized. Since also when, if I may remember, you may correct me as well, it was enacted up to now. We should be having a forensic laboratory that is well equipped and to have independent Coroner Director General.
We can split hairs on this issue until the cows come home. The point is this, very plain and straightforward. You know, there's some strange imagination that people have that I'm not able to deal with. The law is as clear as it is. I didn't write it. And then second, when you go into an office, you act, as I said, responsibly. You ask yourself, what does the law allow me to do here? There are some cases where you will even suspect that this matter has been done by so-and-so, it has gone this direction. You patiently say, the law requires me to investigate this matter and come to a conclusion on the situation. You see, all those issues you're asking me about the coroner's office, why it doesn't exist, and so on. I am not a minister. I am an ordinary individual. I left that docket 3 years ago.
Yes, you did. But of course, the act, even when the act came into place, you were not the minister then?
And then secondly also, please let's stick with the issue that we are dealing with first. The investigations that have happened, there are so many investigations that are not complete because of the complexities of the crimes that have happened before. I have often pointed this out and I'll point it out all the time. There is no minister who has powers to either expedite or take over the investigations themselves and go and do them because you are either unhappy about the pace that they are following or you know that they should be done in a particular way. We all submit ourselves to the law. And how we submit ourselves to the law is that the DCI opens the file and stays on the matter until they get the culprit. If the culprit include the minister is not above the law. He is punished or prosecuted. Honestly, I don't know what we are discussing on this matter because beyond the action of the National Security Council, there is nothing else the council could do at that particular time except insist on those investigations to be done. Mm-hmm. Crimes are not going to end today or tomorrow. They will be committed all the time. The question usually is, what did you do? Even all these matters on forced disappearances, the question the public keeps asking all the time is that, is due process being followed? Are investigations being done? Are we going to the logical conclusion of this matter? That's the issue. Right. So now the implementation of the Coroner's Act and so on, you know, that's a responsibility that involves the whole of government approach and the institutions that are involved in actualizing and institutionalizing these institutions once they have been enacted by Parliament. And it takes a process. I think when it was enacted, it was towards the tail end of our administration. It's 3 years since we left. Mm-hmm. So I can't give you an answer why it is not in place today.
All right. Let's just move on and we talk about church and politics here. And I wanted just to ask you, because I know you're a member also of Nairobi South Church. Are you still a member there?
My church and worship is a private affair.
It's honestly, a private affair?
And I don't think it's something I need to discuss publicly. My faith is a private affair.
Okay, because you say your faith is a private affair, and you also on record saying that your Christianity and religion is your private affair. You think religion has been abused and used for conmanship?
Well, you see, Dibal, I can't, you know, there are matters like religion on which you can't pass judgment, you know, offhandedly. I think from, like all of us, I think everybody, you know, in society has got friends and people they know within the religious space, whatever station they occupy in that and so on. The people always discuss these things. There are people who come across and, you know, always they talk about their religiosity or their Christianity or lack thereof and so on and so forth. We have witnessed this. I don't think this is really a matter that is Fred Matiang'i spoken. It's a matter that everybody sees around about. People ask questions about the things we say in public and the things we do elsewhere and so on and so forth. That is why when I'm in the public space, I want to respect other people and other people's views and other people's opinions about religion so that I don't now start talking about where I worship, how I worship. I don't know what that has got to do with my public responsibilities. But you see...
But we have the spectre of Shakahola, just as we discussed, and I wanted just to ask on that particular, just a quick one, because we had also the task force that went about, you know, investigating what's really happened in Shakahola, the Mutava Musimi reports, and they are recommending that we should have a religious affairs commission. I'm sort of wondering, if you are the president, will you implement this religious affairs commission?
Well, I doubt, because you see, why you would be regulating how people worship? I mean, are you really going to regulate how people worship and where they worship and what they do in terms of worship? In my view, I know that could very easily be challenged, because it probably even flies in the face of freedom of association and freedom of worship.
Rwanda has done it.
I don't know the constitution of Rwanda. Maybe the constitution of Rwanda allows it. The constitution of Kenya, I don't know, it allows that kind of regulation. But anyway, you ask
so you will not. You will not.
A direct question whether I will implement that. I will not, because I will not.
Thank you.
I will not like to interfere with how people worship.
All right, thank you. Yeah. All right, let's go back to politics, and we discuss now the issues to do with your party that you'll be running under. Are you still in Jubilee Party?
When was I in Jubilee Party?
Because we've been seeing, no. The perception is, he's running maybe with the ticket of a Jubilee Party. And we've heard the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party saying, of course, we're fronting Fred Matiang'i. Your correlations also with the president's, the former president as well. There has been that perception. I'm not saying you're in a Jubilee Party. Are you running under, or are you considering running under Jubilee Party?
I've answered this question elsewhere, and the same answer I will give you.
Please do.
As I said, in our country, first of all, it's since the advent of multi-party politics, it isn't common that you would run on one party. You've got to work and build coalitions and have discussions with a number of people. The other parties that have said that they would not mind me being their presidential candidate. But the truth of the matter, as I've said several times before, I was a cabinet minister under the Jubilee administration. I implemented the Jubilee manifesto, worked under the Jubilee president. So for all intents and purposes, actually, my orientation to public service and my orientation to national affairs is essentially contextualized within Jubilee party practice. So if somebody were to talk about my political sympathies and party political sympathies,
it leans more to Jubilee.
They would lean obviously more towards Jubilee, because if I didn't accept Jubilee's policies and manifesto, why would I serve as a cabinet minister under Jubilee administration? So the discussions have been going on, and I've been discussing with a number of people, and the Secretary General of Jubilee has rightly, and within his own right as a leader in this country and as a public person expressed his interest and his views, and said, in his view, and according to members of Jubilee, they would think that I would be their presidential candidate, which is their right. Other people have done that. Peter Munya, who's the party leader of PNU, said that the other day clearly, that, we in PNU, our presidential candidate will be Fred Matiang'i, we will support him. The other parties who have said that, discussions are going on. I know that in the long run, I will run, or I will, be a candidate from a particular party. But in this phase of my present life, I am engaged in conversations and discussions with a number of political players with a view to finally creating a framework or going into national contestation through a framework of a coalition. But very, very soon, I am going to make public my final decision on that matter, and my final membership of a party on that particular matter. And we will go forward. I'll continue to work with the others, on national politics. And by the way, as I said earlier, I don't know why anyone would be impatient about this matter, because these negotiations and these discussions are painstaking and they take a long time. You don't have to hurry them. You saw what happened in 2002. You saw what happened in 2017 and 2013, sorry, and so on. The discussions continue even up to the last quarter of the election year, and then a decision is made at that particular time. So no one has lost time. There is no time here, and so on. Besides, anyway, as I normally say.
But if you're still flying under the perception of a Jubilee party, because it's lost favor in the Mount Kenya region as it is right now, if you go on the ground, there's a huge chasm that is developing between the Jubilee party, even as they try to revive it again, and the DCP. Don't you think also that is also bringing a very negative cloud bank hanging over you with the tag of a Jubilee party?
I will cross the bridge when I come to it.
It might be too late to cross that bridge if you don't make a decision right now.
Dibali, you are not a prophet, and you are not a political a genius or advisor who, or sage who should advise people on when to make political decisions. The question is this: I'm very realistic and pragmatic about this. And what you are saying is your perception. It is not the reality. It may not be the science of it. I think we are better off, even in politics, engaging in a very pragmatic and realistic manner, in the manner in which we do things. I'm working with a lot of people. I'm having conversations with a lot of people. Many of them are very experienced political players and people who actually understand this country and have taken time to study it and know what is happening. I'm also engaged in conversations with people, even from that part of the country that you're talking about. I don't get that impression that you're airing, but the truth of the matter is this: we will make that decision when that time comes, and then once we make that decision, we will deal with the reality at that particular time and the consequences of that decision. There is no single decision you will make in this life that doesn't have consequences. I am prepared to go before the people of Kenya honestly and sincerely, and ask them for support and ask them for their vote, to become their leader. And they will judge me by what they know, and they will judge me by the content of my character. In any case, by the way, there are about 89 political parties in this country, more parties than there are parties in the whole of Europe. Does that mean that we are more democratic than most of Europe is? This political party thing, I have often said, is something that we also need to be very careful about. Because, people bandy around here and elect people on the basis of this. There are characters, despicable characters in the political practice right now, who are dancing around committing crimes and so on. Tomorrow, they will remove the uniforms they are wearing and they will, wear new party uniforms. So they become suddenly angels because of that. So we should also look at the kind of weight we are placing to this. And in my view, our discussion on this matter is actually spending too much time on an issue that I think is not substantively and in the long run, not materially important. What is materially important is people would say, like it was said on 14th of October 2002, Kibaki Tosha. The vehicle that Kibaki now moved on to is another matter. People look at the content of the character of the leader and the principles and the capacity of that leader before you even begin to look for the party. You can come here in a party called Jerusalem, but if you are a thief and some despicable character, your Jerusalem party doesn't make you a holy fellow and a guy who should be a leader, as it were. So Kenyans are smarter than we think sometimes. Let's not spend so much time on this. Let's keep walking and keep talking to people. I value the conversations with leaders more than these petty things about parties and what people tell you, what ordinary people tell you, and you listen to them, whether they're market women or whatever. They will be more inclined to whether or not they trust you as the leader, you come in a party called Jerusalem. You don't become any more trustworthy because your party is called Jerusalem. But anyway.
But the input of a party is a manifesto, is how we'll actually judge you, because you'll come through a party, we'll read through your manifesto and see and judge you whether you deliver or not through that particular party.
I will have one, and I'm going to declare one sooner rather than later. And I'm headed in that direction, but I'm going it in a very patient, structured, informed, consultative, careful manner. It's not one thing that you want to hurry to. It's an important decision to make, and all important decisions require care, caution, consultation, commitment.
Thank you.
That's what I'm trying to do.
The Gen Z is a very important salutary effort that we've seen coming from them, a very important voice as well. I'm wondering, what do you have up your collective sleeves as far as planning for the Gen Z is concerned, even for your own political machinery moving forward?
Even right now, in planning what we are doing for the elections and so on, we're working with huge groups of young people and listening to them. When we finally develop our platform, it will include heavily, and it will project the voice of young people. The discussions about Gen Z and the youth of this country, in my view, are more about voice, participation, trustworthy delivery and participation in public affairs, and obviously the question of inclusion, addressing the issues. When the country is looted, it's not only the adults who suffer the pain of it. The Gen Zs lose even more because they are the future for whom the resources of the country should mean more. So the issues of the Gen Zs are not necessarily different from the issues of the rest of the population, but it's a question of greater inclusion and greater voice in engaging with them and the things we do. We worked on reforming the education sector in the country, we worked on providing more job opportunities in the country, worked on fine-tuning and making sure that we have a better government bureaucracy that provides equitable opportunity. If we run a government that focuses more on merit than tribe and than connections and so on, everyone benefits, including the Gen Zs. And then this is what we are talking about. We want to run a government that is completely driven by meritocracy.
All right, I want just to, even as we are looking forward to winding up, get a bit personal and ask you some of the things that maybe you believe in fervently as a person. First of all, if you may hark back to also your public service life, is there anything you regret in public life that you would like maybe to tender public apology over to Kenyans?
No,
there's nothing.
There's nothing I regret. I mean, I enjoyed my tour of duty in the public service every day, every minute, with all its
seamlessly.
I enjoyed it. Of course, you know, there are challenges. We confronted, many challenges. I mean, Mutai Kawe and I, him as Cabinet Secretary for Health and me as Minister for Interior, were the ones who are mainly charged with the responsibility of managing our government response to during the COVID pandemic and so on. It's a big challenge. For 8 months, people forget that for 8 months I was both the Minister for Education and Minister for Interior. Kaiseri died just before the elections, and I stayed in that post for a long time, and I was at the same time Minister for Education. So my service was fine. In fact, if there's anything that I regret that I didn't do, it's an administrative or as an assignment that President Kenyatta gave us that I feel personally, if I had an opportunity in government, something I would want to do, he had wanted us to work on establishing an institution at the Kenya School of Government for continuity of public service, training and mentorship. And we were supposed to put this up so that we can tap on the wealth of the retiring public servants to mentor and train younger public servants as a way of deepening our public service tradition and the public service culture in the country. There was too much to do, so we never quite got around to establishing that particular institution. And every time I look at the public service, every time I interact with public servants, I feel that that's something that we ought to have done. But there's nothing I regret from my public service. I mean, I enjoyed every bit of it with all its challenges, and I thank God that I had the opportunity to serve my country.
Right. Yeah. Under the Big Four agenda, I think housing was a big project under Uhuru Kenyatta. And I'll ask you again, affordable housing. We've had also members from your camp saying when they get to power, they'll scrap it. Will you continue with affordable housing?
Not in the manner in which it's being implemented right now. Because we discussed the matter very carefully and we spent a lot of time. We even actually had internationally reputable consultants advising on this matter. We engaged with even the opposition in Parliament at that particular time, and the idea of a forced contribution we discovered couldn't work. We finally settled on a voluntary contribution scheme, and then to now start working on a small team in cabinet was put together. We didn't get to finish it by the time we were leaving office, to work together on a package of incentives to work with other resource mobilization institutions like SACCOs and so on to see how best we can now do targeted investment in housing in the country to increase home ownership and so on. I have to be very honest, we can't continue the housing arrangement the way it's being done right now. Burdensome in terms of taxation, convoluted, and you can see clearly the way it's being done, it's intended to benefit suppliers more than look at the home ownership. I mean, very little of it makes sense in the way it's being implemented. I would rather go to the model of a voluntary contribution as it were than this forced. I mean, people would make arguments they would make, but for sure I wouldn't continue it in the manner in which it's being implemented right now.
All right, so we're also looking at a very polarized world that we're in, if we may just step out now from our boundaries here in the country. And the question of whether we'll be facing the West or the East will come to bear to you as well. And I wanted to know looking at the configuration that is happening and the foreign policy even of our country, and we've seen what is happening with the USA as it stands right now with China, what will be your take? What will be your stand? Where will you be facing?
I would go back to, the position that President Uhuru Kenyatta articulated was essentially a government's position as a government generally, and that's the mantra that we believed in. Don't bother focusing on the east or the west, focus forward and keep all your friends. The founding fathers of this nation were very keen about the non-aligned movement, and the engagement. We don't have to get involved in things that we don't have to get involved in as a country that have no value to us. Secondly, the truth of the matter is this, and you cannot, personally, I can't even lie or pretend about it, because some of our traditional partners who are our indispensable partners, like the United States of America, like the EU and the UK, they are our historic partners. They are partners we have worked with for a very long time. That does not mean that I will dispense with the others, but I will give priority to those who have been our traditional partners who have worked with us for a long period of time, and I will probably listen and work more with them. I will be alive to the developments around the world, but I'll be more interested in where our best interests are served as a country. And I mean, it's no brainer. Our engagement with some of our traditional partners and so on has been very, very strong. And I wouldn't even pretend about it. I was the Minister for Security, signed a security compact with the United States of America. We signed a security compact with the UK, and we worked very well with the EU and the capacity building work they were doing for us in the security sector and the intelligence sharing and the work we are doing. Why would I abandon that? Why would you abandon it if it has served as well? I'll continue the relationship that Kenya has had with its traditional partners and then work with them in that kind of manner because it works well for all of us.
Kenya has also been a stabilizing figure around the region, East African region. Of course, we've seen what is happening. Also in Congo, it has been heavily involved. How can you restore the favor that we've had in the region, looking at the diplomatic tiffs that we've had with other countries, especially Sudan?
We are an anchor state in East Africa. That is a fact. And our position is very important to the stability of the region. We happen to be in a region that is fairly volatile. There are challenges that happen in most of our neighboring countries. The best thing we could do, or the least we could do, is to be a trusted partner and a trusted neighbor to our neighbors. In other words, not get involved in very nasty and dirty goings-on activities inside our countries, inside the neighboring countries. Why would I take positions on a fighting that is going on in Sudan on one side or the other? Why would I get involved in a conflict that's going on in a neighboring country on one side or the other? It doesn't serve the interest of my country. The region is one of our largest trading partners, and we need to preserve that and keep that. We don't have to poke our noses in the internal affairs that's happening in those countries. If anything, we need to be good, trusted, or trustworthy partners to our neighbors. That's how we'll maintain our anchor state status in the region, and that's how we'll be trusted by others. We realize that if we are not going to be trusted by our neighbors, then we are going to experience certain vulnerabilities that will eventually affect our economy and affect our standing around. We have to be strong here, and to be strong is to begin by being sincere brokers, trusted people. And when our neighbors have got internal conflict, we don't get involved on one side or the other. We can bring peace by talking to both, by respecting the structures that exist in those countries, but not getting involved on one side or the other where there's a conflict inside our neighboring countries. That way, then, it preserves our position of respect and trust, which we have enjoyed over a period of time. That's what makes Kenyans safe and respected wherever they go. Because, if they are Kenyan consultants going to Khartoum, they need to feel secure. They don't need to be looked at like citizens of a country that has taken positions on a conflict that is inside their country. And we have held this position for a very long time, enjoyed respect and been respected by others for a very long time. Why would I change that position? If anything, I would do everything I can to enhance that position in the region. Why? Because our foremost trading relations are in this particular region. That's how we grow our economy. And by the way, our population is very versatile and very mobile. So we have to act in a manner that is protective of our population and protective of the economic interests that we have ourselves in the region. We are moving into investment in DRC Congo, moving into investment in South Sudan and in Sudan. Why on earth would I take a position against a government that is in office, or take a position on one side or the other on an issue like that. So to maintain our anchor position in this region, it would require that we maintain a certain solid foreign policy posture, which respects the institutions that exist in our neighboring countries, and ensure that we do not unnecessarily get involved in conflict in those countries, at least in a manner that injures our reputation and our standing in the region.
Finally, your dream is to be the Lingua U of Kenya. And you talk about meritocracy. Why did you choose Lingua U?
Because he built his country by just basically obeying common sense. Simple as that. That what you need to do in this country, you don't need new laws in Kenya. People keep talking about you don't need new laws, you don't need new institutions. You just need the honest and pragmatic, trustworthy people to run the country.
He was very ruthless on corruption.
Oh, yes, that is it. The looting that is going on in this country has got to be dealt with. And I keep saying this. It's not about the laws. It's not about the institutions. It is about the strongest weapon of fighting these issues, first of all, is exemplary leadership. You will not stop anybody from doing what you do every day as a leader. And then I'm willing to stand up and say, I want to do it. And because of that, I'll begin leading a process where public officers don't do it. So there is no amount of law, or there are no institutions anywhere on earth.
His character as a benevolent dictator.
Well, it depends on who perceives him, but he achieved development for his country, and he led his country to, modernization. The question is, it depends on who perceives him and what you are interested in him. There's nobody who's 100% perfect in this world. But what I admire most in him is, and this is what I address all the time when people, for example, tell me, you are a bulldozer, or you push things so hard. I say, no, I'm result-oriented. We wake up in the morning to go and work. Let's go and do the work that we tell people we are going to do, or we have been given an assignment to do. Let us do the work. And then, this is usually a black and white situation. There is nothing in between.
So results-oriented, no empathy?
No, but you see, empathy does not mean incompetence. Empathy is not another word for incompetence, or empathy is not another word for idiocy or fooling around. You can be empathetic and be result-oriented. That is it. We live in an environment where people like joking around, saying,
But this is a perception. People will perceive, and they'll say, Fred Matiang'i, his system of management and manner of management is foot on the neck kind of management. It's either we get results or not. Very abrasive, very unrelenting. You will actually do anything to get anyone out of your way to achieve what you want.
No, you see, in this life, let me tell you, the greatest hazard in this life, one great guy, I say, is to risk nothing. Because if you risk nothing, you gain nothing. You just remain who you are. And the greatest risk you take is, once you have accepted an assignment, is to be so goal-dedicated to ensure that is done. And that comes with challenges. And, in an environment where sometimes, or in a context where sometimes people don't look at the goal and the results, they may think that you are pushing them. But the results get done. And then in most cases, you don't invent the results or the goals. They are agreed within a very defined set and institutional framework of conduct. We are a government. We are not a joke. We have agreed this is what we are going to do as a government. So we do it. Or we go out there and tell people, good people, like I told people when I reached exams in 2015, I had just become minister, and I apologized to the country. I said, I'm sorry this exam was leaked. As your new minister for education, first of all, I have to tender an apology that clearly this exam was leaked. I have arrived in this ministry today. I'm going to do everything it takes and everything I can do as a human being, working with my colleagues here to ensure that this nonsense doesn't happen again. And I will stay on it. So, whether it's waking up at 3 a.m. to go to containers or going to sit in classroom, that is the challenge it takes to get the task done. So how are you a dictator when you are pursuing a goal? The converse of that is if you are some lazy guy, happy-go-lucky idiot who just spends time on tea and mandazi every day, read long speeches, and so on. And that's not what Kenya needs. Praise yourself every day, say how you are the seer, the greatest person that ever lived in the world. That is not what the country needs. The country needs results. And when the results are there, you don't even need to talk about it. The people will say, no. This is the way I think we should go. You don't have to tell people anything. Because when you paint a house, people will see it's painted. You don't have to tell people, hey, look, I painted a house.
Dr. Fred Okango Matiang'i. I'll be remiss if I don't ask this question, which everyone asks all the time. And I know it can rile you up. Are you President Uhuru Kenyatta's project?
No, I am not. I mean, why would I be riled by that? People ask me that is not even something that can annoy me. It can't even annoy a cockroach. That is a simple matter.
It cannot annoy a cockroach.
It's a simple matter. Why would I be annoyed about that? You see,
so and
actually, I even expect that you would ask that because I served under President Kenyatta as a cabinet minister for 10 years. He trusted me in the last 3 years of his administration to chair the cabinet coordination, committee, and he is my friend, and have no problems about that. Now, how would I be a project? I have just come from the World Bank. Am I the World Bank's project? Sometimes, let me tell you, my brother, people just need to respect the common sense. Let's get some stuff done. I get asked this question all the time, and I tell people, this is how, as a country, we are not going to succeed. We spend time on pettiness. Some of us spend time on pettiness and silly things that don't make sense. I mean, look, I appointed about 30 or so people into cabinet. The current president was his deputy, so who would be more project than me?
But don't you think this pettiness also has woven into a political culture?
I don't.
That's very low.
That's why we should fight it. And I'm prepared to fight it. Get the work done. Then people don't spend time on those types of things. Because how can you say, I interviewed the other day. I interviewed twice for it can't get higher than that. Or hired by the bank. It's not President Kenya who picked up the phone and said, hey, you guys, can you have read? It's not so
but that is apolitical. Yeah. It's apolitical.
So now
this is political.
How can I be his project? So I don't mind. As you said, it's something that will rile me. It won't annoy me. There are other things that would annoy me, not that one. I get asked that all the time.
Yeah, but on campaign financing, will he be actually bankrolling you?
You see, the reason why, and people ask me that question all the time, by the way, where are you going to get money? You are a poor fellow, and so on and so forth. That is fine. And by the way, I don't dispute that. Me, I have not smuggled gold from anywhere. I have not looted anything. I'm just Fred. You are working with people, and I'm happy. I meet friends of mine who tell me, by the way, Waziri, I will fuel your car. I will give you 100,000 to fuel your car. So I move around with my friends, as you are seeing. I meet classmates here. We put some money together. We do stuff, like ordinary people. If President Kenyatta gives me a contribution for it will be one among hundreds of people who are going to give me a contribution. I will ask contribution from everybody for the campaign. And there's nothing. It's true. People say, I don't have money. I don't have big money. Me, I'm raising money from people. Through my campaign, ask them. I was in the U.S. the other day raising money from Kenyans who live in the U.S., contributing $100, $200, and so on. That is how I'm funding my campaign.
All right. Well, the issue of still campaign financing, I've heard you talking about, the system that we have in Kenya really allows the wash and the money laundering to actually bring these leaders that we have in our system currently to come and lead us. And so our political culture also has sunk this low because of the caliber of leaders that we do have. Then how do we tighten this campaign financing? Because that's a critical area that we need to look at.
Enact a campaign financing law, which unfortunately cannot be enacted because the people to enact it are the greatest offenders. They will not enact it. So because you see, if they would enact that campaign finance law, the many countries around the world have enacted campaign finance law, where you make declarations on your finances and file declarations to a commission on the finances you're using for campaign and what's happening. And if people have contrary views about the finances you're using and they have evidence about it, you are thrown out of office. I mean, I would be happy if that was existent in Kenya, and I would go there myself and make the declaration. But you see, because we don't have a campaign financing regime in this country that is very strict, we don't have a law about that. Everybody spends what they spend. That's why you are seeing the bribery has started 2 years in advance of an election. You know, people are being buzzed to be bribed. You know, people are bribed blind. And I keep telling Kenyans, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because they are sitting on copious loads of cash.
Thank you.
And they are going to be bribing everybody. But it's upon the Kenyans to decide, because you see, we have chosen democracy, isn't it? Tutaenda kwa Wakenya, tuongee na Wakenya, tuwaeleze, what kind of government do you want? Do you want us to do serious business? And the Kenyans are serious people, and I believe, honestly, that they want serious work to be done, and that's why we are offering ourselves. If they want to wash people,
it's up to them. All right, so you have the final moment with the camera. You're looking at the faces of Kenyans as well. What would you tell Kenyans with your closing remarks?
First, I am grateful to God that I've had the opportunity to serve my country in various responsibilities before. I thank the Lord that I have this opportunity to converse with the people of Kenya. I would like to lead my country and make a contribution in managing this country better. We are better people as a country. Some of the things you see here are not our destiny. Looting our country the way we are looting it is not our destiny. God has blessed us abundantly with resources to look after ourselves, our children, and our children's children. This is a serious country. 62 years after independence, we should manage ourselves better. I am ready, willing, and available to manage our country better. You know, run our country differently from the way it is being run now, together with those others of goodwill who want to improve the lives of our people. And I promise that if you trust me enough, you'll give me the responsibility, but I also ask you immediately thereafter, please hold me to account. I'm not just asking for your support, I'm asking you to both, when the time comes, vote for me, and also hold me to account. The buck will stop here. I will take responsibility. I will not shirk, hide, or make excuses for what you expect me to do for you. I will do it, and I promise you, I will not let you down.
Thank you, Dr. Fred Okengo Matiang'i. Really do appreciate coming through to the Insight. We really appreciate your insights as well this evening, and all the best in your presidential, of course, candidacy 2027.
Thank you so much. God bless you, and it's time to go and sleep, my friend.
Thank you.
This is yours.